Dr. K opens the conversation by exploring the concept of toxic fuel, a form of motivation that, while effective in driving people from point A to B or even further, exacts a significant cost on their mental and physical health. Toxic fuel often arises from negative emotions, such as anger, fear, and anxiety, or from external pressures like trying to meet others' expectations. It's a compelling but dangerous motivator because although it can produce results, it quickly burns a person out through chronic stress responses. He elaborates on why toxic fuel is so commonly used despite its harm, pointing to evolutionary biology. Anger, fear, and the desire to avoid disappointment are powerful survival mechanisms originally designed to keep humans safe. These feelings trigger neurological responses like increased cortisol and adrenaline that gear the body toward immediate action. However, the survival-focused brain wiring does not distinguish between real physical threats and psychological stress from everyday pressures, which leads to chronic wear and tear on the body and mind. The urgent energy produced by toxic fuel wears people down, leaving them exhausted and unhappy even when goals are achieved. A profound exploration centers on how complex emotions motivate behavior, particularly in men. Dr. K discusses how sadness and crying signal vulnerability, an evolutionary mechanism designed to elicit social support. In modern society, however, this vulnerability is often met with ignoring or invalidation, especially for men who culturally are discouraged from showing sadness openly. Faced with a lack of support, men internally transmute sadness, shame, or despair into anger, which serves as a more socially acceptable and energizing emotion. This transformation from sadness to anger is a form of emotional alchemy that allows some men to harness their pain as a drive for achievement or confrontation. For example, a man rejected in a relationship might feel ashamed or sad, but then channel that into anger, pushing himself to improve his status or prove himself. Dr. K notes the importance of understanding these underlying emotions because treating surface anger without addressing shame or fear will not provide lasting relief or motivation. The interplay between inward-turned anger, depression, and outward-directed anger reveals deep nuances in emotional regulation and motivation. A significant topic Dr. K tackles is the role of the ego in fueling toxic motivation. The ego, the socially constructed identity we build around titles, achievements, and status, drives many people's ambitions in ways that are ultimately unsatisfying. He points out that while society often praises striving to be the best, the ego is insatiable and never truly satisfied with achievement. It continuously shifts goalposts, leading to an endless cycle of stress and pursuit. The ego's demands cause extreme states like gold medalist syndrome, where even after monumental success, individuals often feel a profound sense of emptiness or despair. This is because the goal was tied to external validation rather than intrinsic satisfaction or deeper purpose. Dr. K stresses the idea that reducing attachment to ego and identity is crucial for long-term happiness and sustainable motivation, a concept supported by both spiritual traditions and psychological research. In response to the struggles with toxic fuel, Dr. K offers a developmental perspective on motivation. He draws an analogy to rocket launches, explaining that while toxic fuel, such as anger and fear, might be necessary to get someone off the launch pad, initially propelling action, it must eventually be replaced with more sustainable intrinsic motivators, likened to booster rockets that keep the journey going smoothly. He stresses that personal growth and maturation involve moving from external motivation, driven by ego and social approval, to internal motivation, grounded in values such as service, purpose, and relatedness to others. This transition requires mental and even physical separation from old environments and identities, often manifesting as the lonely chapter, a phase of isolation and self-discovery that is difficult but essential. Developing this intrinsic motivation leads to greater peace and resilience. Dr. K identifies a phenomenon increasingly common in modern adults, the quarter-life crisis. Unlike traditional midlife crises, young people in their 20s experience a profound existential questioning about their purpose, identity, and trajectory much earlier. He explains that this crisis stems from the conflict between societal expectations and an internal sense of mismatch or dissatisfaction with one's life path. Through his clinical work, Dr. K emphasizes that this crisis process involves initially checking out mentally and sometimes physically from one's previous life or career, needing to disengage from old identities to explore authentic desires. The crisis invites reflection, new experiences, and eventually a recrafting of life aligned more closely to one's true self, not the ego's demands. Dr. K and the co-host also discuss how meditation, journaling, breathwork, and other contemplative practices form crucial tools to navigate this phase and build healthier motivation systems. A recurring theme is the unique emotional challenges men face, particularly the invisibility of male emotional labor. Dr. K highlights that men often bear the burden of emotional containment, the role of absorbing and managing the emotional overflow of their families and social group. While women may provide emotional support by listening and validating feelings, men frequently fulfill the taxing role of remaining stoic and controlling emotional reactions for the sake of group stability. This role can lead to chronic suppression and burnout, making it difficult for men to express vulnerability or find healthy outlets. The cultural denial of male sadness, coupled with expectation of resilience, often channels male distress into anger. Dr. K underlines the importance of acknowledging and reframing this emotional labor, encouraging men to cultivate emotional mastery, which is not suppression, but balanced regulation and integration of emotions. Dr. K introduces a compelling hypothesis addressing contemporary shifts in male behavior. Known historically as young male syndrome, excess numbers of single, reproductive age males have been associated with societal instability and antisocial behaviors. However, despite rising rates of sexlessness and inceldom in modern developed societies, widespread manifestations of this syndrome appear absent. His theory suggests that pervasive digital consumption, pornography, video games, social media, provides a titrated dose of sexual satisfaction, status seeking, and social interaction that sedates the biological drives that once led to direct social competition. As a result, young men today are less dangerous but often lack meaningful social engagement or productivity, creating a generation of men who are no longer dangerous but largely useless. This sedation dynamic raises questions about future social cohesion and individual fulfillment. The conversation explores how motivations in biology shape long-term relationships and sexual dynamics, especially male drive for muscularity and its unclear impact on relationship stability. Dr. K explains that while musculature may signal discipline and health, an extreme focus on it correlates negatively with relationship longevity. Rigid lifestyles oriented around appearance can interfere with emotional connection and shared family responsibilities, factors far more important to women for long-term partnership. They also dissect common misunderstandings about sexual preferences and behaviors, noting that women often prioritize safety, trust, and emotional connection over physical attributes. The discussion covers the interplay between male and female sexual arousal systems, the impact of stress and environmental factors on intimacy, and how couples frequently negotiate mismatched levels of desire. The importance of communication, shared emotional labor, and mutual support is emphasized as key to overcoming dead bedroom or intimacy challenges. Dr. K delves into spiritual approaches to motivation and selfhood, particularly how meditation and practices that lead to ego-dissolution can transform one's relationship with motivation and identity. He explains that ego, being the collection of conditioned thoughts, identities, and feelings, is malleable and not inherently the true self. Deconstructing and transcending the ego allows for a more peaceful, integrated self that is no longer driven solely by external validation or anxious striving. Highlighting the value of long-term and high-quality meditation beyond apps and casual practice, Dr. K connects this approach with increased intrinsic motivation and psychological resilience. He also relates these insights to psychedelic experiences, which often induce ego death and have been scientifically shown to enhance motivation and well-being. The key takeaway is that liberation from ego-based motivation enables healthier fuel for sustainable achievement. Expanding on motivation, Dr. K describes how intrinsic motivation, linked to internal values and purpose, and extrinsic motivation, linked to external rewards and social approval, are controlled by overlapping brain circuits that effectively switch a person between modes. This explains why people often struggle to tap into internal motivation when their minds are consumed by external pressures like pleasing others or chasing status. He emphasizes the necessity of creating mental distance, physically and psychologically, from external sources of pressure to foster intrinsic drive. This mental separation, a hallmark of the quarter-life crisis and lonely chapter, is an essential developmental process. Dr. K advises focusing less on outcomes and more on exercising agency, stretching capabilities, and building authentic relatedness to rediscover sustainable motivation. The episode explores philosophical and psychological perspectives on the sense of self, authenticity, and identity. Dr. K and the host engage with a study illustrating how people project their values onto others when judging who is authentic. Authenticity isn't a fixed essence inside people, but rather a complex, evolving emergent property of thoughts, feelings, and social interactions, often influenced by cultural and personal biases. Dr. K proposes viewing the self as the pure experience of awareness underlying thoughts, emotions, and social roles, which are all transient and conditioned. This perspective frees individuals to intentionally reshape their identities by choosing which programming to reinforce or discard. Real selfhood is awareness itself, not the content of identity, which challenges conventional attachment to ego and social roles, but opens pathways to deeper peace and motivation. Towards the end, Dr. K shares cautious insights about the growing use of AI models like ChatGPT in mental health. While AI demonstrates impressive ability to generate relevant responses and even identify potential diagnoses, it fundamentally relies on pattern recognition from large text corpora, including unreliable internet content. AI is designed to predict responses that satisfy users, meaning it tends to reinforce existing beliefs rather than challenge them. He warns that over-reliance on AI for mental health support can amplify issues like hypochondria, reinforce maladaptive thought cycles, and create echo chambers without the critical, empathetic engagement a human therapist provides. While AI may offer some practical assistance, it cannot replace the nuanced, evolving, and relational nature of true therapeutic work, especially for complex emotional and psychological conditions.